Sacramento, and so glad that you've tuned in to Soapbox tonight. I'm Joanne Fuller. I'm the guest host for tonight, and really glad that you're joining us because we have a great show tonight. As you can see, we have a lot of guests in the studio, but first I want to tell you about the wonderful people that sponsor the show. Our underwriters are really terrific people in the community, and we're really delighted that Pieces Pizza is with us, and they're at Capitol and 21st Street in Sacramento. They make delicious pizza, and we've enjoyed some tonight. And our other co-sponsor is Humor Times. You know, this is a great compiling of cartoons that have been shown in the month's press over a month, and then they're compiled together to kind of give you a picture of what's been happening over the month in cartoons. So check that out too, Humor Times. So tonight, what we're going to be doing is talking about what things are good to plant, how to plant them, in this time of really big stress. It's stress for everybody just because it's been hot for a long time, and the plants have been hot, and we've all been hot, and there's not as much water as we're used to. So the guests tonight are going to be sharing what their experience is and what they know about, and giving us some advice for how to really deal with this lack of water, and what plants would be good to use in the landscape. So I have with me tonight Chris Brown. Chris, let me read here. You are the former executive director of the California Urban Water Conservation Council. You're also helping write a national drought preparedness manual. And besides that, you install rainwater and gray water systems, and you know about permaculture landscape. So we'll have to hear about what that means and how that figures into the whole kind of situation that we're dealing with. Next, I have Daisy Ma is with us. You know, Daisy for years was the gardener that really put together the garden in Land Park, and Daisy, they call that the WPA Rock Garden. You've really done a wonderful job of planting that area, and it's a wonderful place to visit. I know that you're retired now, but you're still working in plant issues, and we really appreciate that. Next, Marcia Letty. Marcia is a gardener here in Sacramento and has had experience redoing her lawn, taking out her lawn, putting in some drought-tolerant plants, and she's been an activist with the Perennial Plant Club here in Sacramento, and we thank you for that work. And last is Jeff Quitter. Jeff is the nursery manager at Hedgerow Farm. Hedgerow is one of the farms over in Willits, right, Jeff? Winters, who they grow, and he's brought some of the plants that they grow. They're especially famous for their grasses and native plants. So we're going to look forward to hearing from you also. So Chris, would you start us off and just let us know, how should we approach this whole time with the problems of not enough water and so on? What should we be doing?
Well, the first thing, if you have turf grass and you want to keep it, is it doesn't need to be watered every day. Turf grass
is kind of what we grow in our lawns.
That's right. It's the English lawn, imported all over the Western world. It wouldn't grow here naturally, and so that's what we're talking about here tonight with all these great people. Is what would grow naturally here, and how you can make a really nice, attractive lawn with plants that are either native or well adapted to our climate. And one of the first things I like to point out to people is that when we designed our urban landscape, they really wanted to get water off the landscape and out to the street, to the gutter. And when you are trying to make your landscape healthy, you don't really want to get rid of all that water. You want to keep all that water. So the first thing to do is reshape the land so that it captures water. You reshape the soil so that you have berms around the edges, and what we call swales, or that's a fancy name for ditch.
Okay, and berm also is kind
of a ditch. It's just a rise.
Oh, okay.
It's a rise in the landscape. It's like a planting bed, but it's on the edge of the landscape. And then by reshaping your landscape, you can capture rainwater. You can capture gray water too from your laundry, and we can talk about that later. But the other thing that you really want to do with your soils is put a lot of organic material into them, because then your soil acts like a sponge and it holds on to water for much longer into the dry season. People like myself who have converted their landscape don't even have to add any irrigation water if you pick the right plants and if you've amended the soil so that it's like a sponge instead of like a hard dirt rock.
And yeah, we want to talk about the gray water, but what do you mean by organic material? What do you...
Yeah, compost is something that there's a lot of different ingredients, little recipes for compost, but basically your kitchen waste or your landscape, if you have a garden, you can throw the green waste in it, and then some brown waste, or leaves or bark or mulch that you can get, and then you allow it to decay down. Turns into a really nice black, it used to be called humus or humus, a part of the soil that really holds on to organics. It creates a structure that all the critters in the soil who are interacting with the roots of your plants and make the plants healthy, make the soil healthy, all of that stuff happens because of the organic material in the soil. It gives them homes, if you will, a little condo system for them to grow in.
So I know all of you have experience with compost and this kind of thing, so feel free to add in as Chris talks about these kind of ways to change the configuration of the land actually that we used to grow lawns on. Most of our lawns were really quite a bit weeds, I've noticed, but anyway, we call them lawns.
Oh yeah. In the parks, we mow the weeds, the green weeds. Yeah, it's quite suitable for recreational activities. But yeah, I wanted to add that there's a lot of ways to learn how to compost. There's the master gardeners have classes on you know, showing you methods of making compost, and there's kind of an art and a science to it. So yeah, I thought maybe it would be a very simple process, but I've learned from my system, which are these plastic containers that you place all the greenery and the dead leaves, that it's not as easy as I had thought. You know? And I thought I turn it constantly because it's designed so you could spin the container of debris, but that doesn't seem to help speed up the process. Yeah.
And when you said master gardeners, that these are people that we can learn from, this is a service that the county provides, right? Experienced gardeners that have gone through training in order to answer people's questions.
Right.
So I get the idea that when you dig up your lawn, when you get rid of your lawn, and various ways to do that, and then you dig a trench around it so that you don't lose any of the water off the yard. What other kind of tricks are there to keeping the water on the yard? Yeah, well,
good point that you just brought up about getting rid of your lawn, getting rid of the grass. Do that with cardboard, do it with organic material. Don't use chemicals, and I don't recommend using machines just because that's, again, a lot of fossil fuels go into churning up the stuff, and it also disrupts whatever living critters are in the soil already. So if you just lay down cardboard and then cover it with mulch, you know, and you can get free mulch if you live in Sacramento. SMUD customers get the benefit of all of the tree clippings ground up for free over at the SMUD yard on Folsom Boulevard near 59th. But yeah, you can do gray water. You can route your gutters from your roof into these swales so that the water from the roof actually ends up feeding the plants. I mean, you can do a lot of neat things in your yard.
And Marcia, that was how you got rid of your lawn, was it?
Yes. Well, basically what we did was we, early in the summer, we turned off the sprinklers and let the grass die, and then just kept mowing the grass down until there was almost just dirt left. And then we collected, my husband collected cardboard boxes from bicycle shops. So you
had
can
great
get big
big
sheets of cardboard. And then one day in September, we just started putting all the cardboard sheets out, and we got a load of the bark mulch and just did the whole process in basically one day for the front yard. Yeah, and then we also created a faux stream across the lawn with stone.
So the effect is that the lawn area that used to be lawn is mulched, and then you have running through it a river of pebbles. Looks very attractive.
Yeah, yeah. And then we were able to keep most of the shrubs and plants that we had right up near the house. We have removed a few things, and then as time goes by, the cardboard disintegrates, and then we've just planted other plants, drought-tolerant plants like yuccas and ergenia and other drought tolerants. And then when we plant those plants, we add a little compost and soil amendment, and then you know, kind of baby them for a while till they get established. Yeah. So
I did everything wrong when I took out my lawn. The lawn was mostly weeds, and what grass there was the Bermuda grass. That's really hard to get rid of. So I kind of jumped in, and I'd heard that if you put plastic over the lawn, that was one way to get it so hot that it would cook the grass. So I did that. What I didn't realize is underneath the plastic there was a leak in the old system, and the lawn was really being watered down there, and it loved it. So I was growing a bumper crop of Bermuda grass under this plastic. It was real hot, and there was plenty of water, and it loved it. So that's not the way to do it. So any other tips about...
Yeah, well, Bermuda is the bane of anybody in the Southwest. It loves our environment. It actually likes not being watered. I had a xeriscape, or low water use landscape, in Las Vegas, Nevada, where it gets 4 inches of rain a year.
Wow.
A desert landscape, literally. No... Bermuda found its way into that every year. Every year. I couldn't figure out how it got there. I had no irrigation, none at all, but Bermuda still came back every single year.
So I actually dug mine and got rid of it that way, which is labor intensive, but kind of fun.
Yeah.
So, and there are many resources as to how to get rid of the lawns, right? You mentioned the master gardeners. Chris, do you have other ideas about
No, the cardboard
resources?
one, I think, that's what we use. The thing that we learned about that was really cool is worms love cardboard, just the way they eat other leaves. And so it turns out that we grew a bumper crop of worms and had all this worm poop right underneath the layer of cardboard. So when we went to plant our plants in it, there was wonderful soil, wonderful food for the plants already there. And the other thing that's sort of cool about worms is they're like a natural rototiller. You don't have to use any machinery. If you've got a healthy soil and the worms are in there, they're turning the soil over for you. Apparently every 24 months, worms will completely aerate and turn over your nutrient balance in your soil. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then, Jeff, I just want to get you in on the conversation from the more commercial gardening point of view. What do you guys do? Do you use compost? Do you are you clearing the land anywhere or anything like that?
We really just supply the native plants, and we're also just on our land. We have a seed production farm, so we're using just the regular farm equipment that is used every year to prepare the dirt and get it ready for planting the next year. And the fertilizers we use are just conventional nitrogen that is used on, conventional farms.
But your nursery stock is not conventional.
Right, the nursery stock is,
yeah, we'll talk a lot more about what plants you all have to offer, because it really is an interesting type. So what else can you tell us about preparing the soil, Chris, or the
Well, one of the things that is important, I mentioned it earlier about the rain that falls, is that your roof of your house, unless you're among, less than a fraction of 1%. I do actually know a guy that's got a green roof here in Sacramento. It takes a lot of money and a lot of time to convert your
What's a green
roof? They put a new frame on the roof so it can hold a lot of weight, and then they put materials on it that they can grow plants on it. And it provides a lot of insulation so that the house is a lot cooler in the summer and a lot warmer in the winter, and at the same time it's really amazing looking when you see and this friend of mine, Kent Thompson, who has this green roof here in town, grows nothing but natives and drought-tolerant adaptive plants on his. So it's all succulents and poppies and things that it's gorgeous. It's like this flower arrangement on his roof.
Wow.
But very rare do you find that. Most of us have a roof that's designed to get the water off of it, and it's not growing anything at all. And as a result, like I mentioned, the yards have been designed to move that water away from the foundation, and it should be away from the foundation. But if you do dig these swales or shallow ditches in your yard to capture that water, then that can be a benefit to all of the plants that you plant, and it'll stay there, especially with organic material, for many months. And people who use this technique basically say that after 3 years, you can essentially not water, or you can start to see the landscape around the edges of the swales begin to really bloom into this, because it's got deeper water, much more consistent. The soil holds onto it for a lot longer. So it's really important to look at your landscape and think about where your gutters, downspouts are, and when you're going to put in that little artificial river or that faux river that you talked about, Marcia, that you think about how that's going to move water away from your house and let it percolate into the soil underneath all your plants. And then you can skip all that summertime irrigation. And if you're in Sacramento and you don't have a meter yet, when you get a meter, you won't pay so much because you won't be watering that.
All right.
So I have a question about adding amendments to the soil. It tends to raise the level of the soil, and sometimes that could be problematic because the water will run off instead of stay put. So would you suggest removing soil?
Yeah, actually, you may want to put some beds depending on how deep you dig the swales, but that's why I always recommend putting berms. I actually learned this technique a couple decades ago in San Antonio, Texas, because they have flash floods. In fact, they refer to the weather there as drought punctuated by flood, because they have these intermittent rainy periods after months of dryness. And if you build the beds around the edge, you put all that raised soil, then you can capture the water away from your house. It runs down, because when they built your house, they sloped everything down towards the front. So if you put the raised bed right at the edge of the sidewalk, then it can capture that. But yeah, we actually used some extra soil because we dug some of our swales a little deeper than we probably needed to. And we used them for raised bed gardens in the back to grow vegetables. So, we're interested in the whole thing. That's part of what permaculture is trying to approach your entire landscape like an ecosystem, and basically gardening and growing plants that are good for pollinators. They're good for the wildlife, which in an urban area is really just birds and some squirrels and all, but also you can eat a lot of it. That's what's really cool, is you can grow things in amongst these trees and all that we have that are actually edible. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've discovered recently that a lot of the plants that are beneficial for pollinators are also edible, like the cabbage and broccoli and basil, but you do have to let the plant flower, which may not work for eating purpose, but it's good for wildlife.
Yeah.
And it brings in bugs, bees, and wasps, and then the birds come in for feasting on the bugs. So it adds to the joy of gardening.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. You know, you mentioned gray water, and I think we have time for you to at least introduce the subject before we go to break. So.
Yeah, gray water is a term used to refer to the water that's not your toilet water in your house. But a few years ago, we got the law changed here in California, which the organization I ran was part of, so that what had used to cost you a lot of money and permits to do in California now can be done without a permit if you just use your laundry water. And you basically plumb it to go out to the yard, and it has to be released under mulch. It can't be released to the surface of the ground, so it has to be a little bit underground. It doesn't have to be deep. And you, Kent, my friend with the green roof, and myself and a number of other people I know have gray water systems. They're great for trees because you don't have to water them during the summertime. You just basically, it provides all the extra water they need. Anytime you wash your clothes, you're basically watering your lawn. If you want to, you can also legally take your shower water and do that as well. But unfortunately, the law was modified a little bit. I don't think this is necessary, but cities can require you to get a plumber to do a permit if you do your shower. So be careful, depending on which city you're in, to find out if you want to do your shower water, whether or not you need to actually have a licensed plumber do that for you. But you can do your lawn, you can do your clothes washer by yourself. Do it yourself if you're do it yourself, and if you're not, there's a lot of people around that do this now. It's a really great way to water your plants, the valuable ones like the trees, on a year-round basis.
And then do you use special soaps in the laundry?
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, you definitely do not want to use dry soap, because the reason that powdery soap stays powdery is it's got salt in it. That's not good for your plants.
Yeah.
And then you want to use soaps that are more eco-friendly. And all the soap manufacturers, it used to be there was only 2 or 3 brands, but now all the soap manufacturers understand this, and they'll say clearly on the bottle whether or not it can be used in the landscape. I mean, there's lots of brands now. You can find them at any grocery store.
Great. And can you estimate how much it costs to have this done?
Yeah, the equipment's going to be about $100 to $150, depending on how far away from your clothes washer the trees are, you know. And then if you do it yourself, the labor is your labor, and if you pay for somebody to do it, it might be $200-300 for the labor. Again, unless you do some sort of Cadillac system. But if you do the clothes wash, I mean, if you do the shower and you have to hire a plumber, all of that's going to be more expensive.
Well, yeah.
How about storing? Is it possible to store the water?
I wouldn't advise that, largely because it can go septic, and you have to make sure that you treat it to keep that from happening from time to time, or you have to design it just right so that it doesn't go septic. Nothing worse than smelly water. So I recommend just getting it straight out into the landscape.
So you don't, what about those rain barrels?
Oh yeah, no, rain barrels are great. They, again, good point. You have to make sure that you have a mosquito screen and that you have a first flush diverter, so all the materials off the roof that include bird and other debris are flushed off to the side before the clean water that comes after the first quarter inch goes into those barrels. But a barrel doesn't save a lot. So for a normal roof with all the square footage that we have, you need a bunch of barrels or a bigger tank. And that's one of the reasons I design systems that go spread the water out into the soil, is just so you don't have to have a dozen barrels on your house. You know.
Yeah, that'd be good. So we've heard about many ways to many things that we need to do in order to collect the water. And I think after break we're going to be talking about selecting some plants and that kind of thing. So really appreciate that you folks are here and are sharing your knowledge with us. So thank you, Chris Brown and Daisy Ma and Marcia Letty and Jeff, and am I saying your name correctly?
Queter.
Queter, thank you. Yeah. All right. And I'm Joanne Fuller. So really glad to be with you here on Soapbox. And today we're talking about plants and the drought and how we're going to keep those plants watered and the best plants to use. So I think we're going to do all that when we come back. And looks like maybe we have time for just one other little tip here. Do you have a tip for us, Chris?
Oh, well, pick plants that are adapted to this climate. I mean, you know, that's one of the most important things. And if you really like a fruit tree or something like that, then the plants you plant around it should also be the ones that are a little bit thirstier, because that's one of the key ways to save water, is group your plants that have similar water demands.
So you aren't putting a lot of water on a plant that doesn't need it.
Right. And
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, good. And Daisy, any tip from you?
Yeah, I agree. It's important to pick plants that are from climates such as ours, Mediterranean climates. And there's kind of a different look to drought gardens. The leaves tend to be smaller and grayer, not as lush, but it's a type of look that we need to learn to love.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, and we'll come back after break.
All right.
Hi, and welcome back to Soapbox. So that was an inspiring a little set of information there that we had during the break, and it kind of goes together with the program that we're doing today. I'm Joanne Fuller. I'm your host here on Soapbox this evening. I have with us a group of people that know a lot about plants and water and how we're going to deal with this drought. So we've heard Chris Brown talk about another famous person, Chris Brown, talk about some of the issues around the drought and what we could do to solve them, or at least to have more water to use for our plants. Daisy Ma is the retired gardener for the WPA garden in Land Park. Marcia Letty is from the Perennial Plant Club, and we have Jeff.
Queter.
So sorry. From Hedgerow Farms. And we're all going to talk more about plants this half of the show. So really glad to have you here. Do you want to start us off, Jeff? Show us some of the materials that you brought. You brought us some plants and also some pictures of the farm that you work at.
Yeah, sure. So Chris was talking about some of the plants. Well, he was talking about the bioswales and the bioretention basins. And we carry some of the plants that you can use for filling those areas and keeping them green and making sure they're doing their job. So some of them that are really good are the Carexes, and this is just one of our little plants. This is how we sell our plants. They come in trays of 200.
So you can see this is a little plant sample, and it's in a little tiny peat pot, right?
They come in trays, and this is actually a plant pulled out of the tray.
I see, I see. Okay. So that's actually the soil of the plant that's down there. Yeah, okay. And this is a grass?
It looks like a grass, but it's actually a sedge, and it's a carex. And this one's a Pacific dune sedge. And all the plants we carry are natives. So these are good for putting in the bottoms and the sides of the bioswales and the retention basins And
So those are those ditches that
Right.
Chris was talking about digging to keep the water in the soil, and you're saying you can make them attractive by putting plants on them.
right, and we carry a lot of the grass plants and the grass look-alike plants, and we carry them in these plugs. And a lot of landscapers and contractors, some homeowners also use these, ones that are doing larger scale. And these are also really good for lawn replacements. So if you still want the green lawn look, you can plant these, and they'll use a lot less water than a regular lawn will.
And then do people mow them? Or?
Yeah, you can mow them if you want, or you can let them grow really long and get long like a meadow. We recommend that you should probably mow them about once a year, or at least cut them back and remove the material that you cut off once a year.
Is that a full sun plant? Or?
They're really they can go in full sun or full shade.
Wow.
Pretty versatile.
Yeah. If you give them full sun, they'll need a little bit more water, and they'll stay greener longer in the shade. But the thing about these, we also sell native grasses in these plugs, and native grass seed, and wildflowers also. But these are much more drought tolerant, as I was saying, than the non-native conventional lawn. And these are natively, actively growing in the summer, and our California native grasses are growing in the winter. So these are green much longer in the summer than the grasses. And you can actually let these go completely dormant if you want to in the summer. Give them no water, and they'll come back nice and green in the winter. If you do that to your lawn, I think that's how you killed your lawn, by just not giving it water. We cut the water off on a demo area of slender sedge in front of our office, and so we cut the water off until July. It was completely brown. We gave it water, and 2 weeks later it was 2 inches tall.
Wow.
It takes a little bit more water to get it green and lush like a lawn, but it was showing signs of coming back after 1 week, actually.
Wow.
Plus, I've heard that the native grasses are an important source of pollen and nectar for pollinators, early season pollinators, when there's not a whole lot in bloom. So the grasses are kind of an important element in kind of if you're encouraging wildlife.
And we all need to be encouraging bees and those type wildlife.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
What else have you got for us, Jeff?
So we also carry a number of wildflower species. This one is evening primrose. We do the perennial wildflowers in the plugs. The annual wildflowers are better from seed. So the ones perennials are ones that live for more than 1 year, and annuals live just 1 year. So those do better just from seed by throwing seed out, raking it in, and watering it up. And you want to do that in the fall. So now is pretty good time to seed.
Yeah, it's a good time to plant.
It is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. You got another one for us, or is that what you brought today?
And then I've also got some examples of our plants in a landscape setting. This one up here in the corner is just a native meadow with different mixed grasses. They're native grasses, all of them. So there's blue wild rye, there's California poppies, and this is how they're going to look in probably early spring, late winter, when everything's greened up. And you can see some of the poppies flowering. And then this next picture over here is some of our state grass. It's Nacella pulchra, or purple needle grass, mixed with a wildflower patch of, I believe there's gum plant, golden lupin, and some more poppies in that one. Then down here, that's a good example of a conventional lawn up against a Carex border. That was one of the plugs I was showing you earlier. And there's some of the arroyo lupins in the back, the purple lupins. And then, let's see, if you go down, that is Carex panza, or Pacific dune sedge. That's one of the ones I was showing you. And that long area is an example of what it looks like when you don't mow it, when you just leave it and let it grow. And that's in our old owner's yard, and that, I don't think he mows that ever. So, but it gets a little bit of water. You can see the conventional lawn in the back. I think that probably gets mowed once a week.
Well, good. Yeah, that gives us an idea of what these things really look like in the setting. And looks like you brought show and tell too, Marcia.
Oh, I just brought a buckwheat, native buckwheat plant that Daisy grew from seed.
Oh.
And so this is a drought tolerant plant for your home garden.
Yeah.
And so this will be available this coming weekend at the Shepherd Garden and Art Sale.
That's right. You want to tell us about, because the Perennial Plant Club and several plant clubs are coming together for a sale this weekend, right?
Right. Saturday and Sunday, October 3rd and 4th, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. each day. The clubs various different clubs will have plants available for sale. And also there's a number of arts and crafts type items for sale, and also food will be available too. So
good.
Is it 10 to 4?
10 to 4, both days.
10 to 4, October 3rd and 4th.
3rd and 4th.
And it's at the Shepherd Garden Center.
Shepherd Garden and Art Center, and it's on McKinley Boulevard and 33rd Street.
Okay, great.
In McKinley Park.
And what is one of the advantages of perennials?
Well, they last in your garden year round, and hopefully you'll have them for a few years.
Right.
Sometimes they, croak after a few years, but there's usually more available.
Yeah.
There's never any shortage. So, and there's so many varieties that it's really fun to, so many colors, and you can do color groupings if you like to do plants that way. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
I've seen that these are good for pollinators, but you know what I'm always curious about, having grown up in the South, is this the same kind of buckwheat they make buckwheat pancakes out of?
Oh.
It's a kissing cousin. The culinary buckwheat is from Europe, and there are many native buckwheats, but this is one that's native to the coast of Santa Barbara.
Nice.
And it does surprisingly well in the valley. With a little bit of shade would be useful.
Yeah.
But, we in the Perennial Plant Club have a amazing propagator who produces many of the plants that we sell at our twice annual sale. And I've given her seed to this buckwheat, and they just sell like pancakes. Yeah, it's really great.
Buckwheat pancakes. Yeah.
It's one of the nicest natives because it blooms in the summer. A lot of the natives go dormant, summer dormant, but this one blooms nicely through the summer. And it's good for bees and butterflies. And it's pretty easy to place. It's a small plant.
Yeah. So, yeah. I know that there were some pictures of plants, so I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to see them and have you talk about some of the ones that are good.
Yeah, I'd be
good
happy.
drought-tolerant plants. So let's see if we can't get some of those. Although while we're doing that, I'll just read off a few plants that I've grown that take really little bits of water. So one is rosemary. So it seems to be a really good one. It takes very little water. There's the Ganzania plant. Gazania. That also takes very little water and blooms.
Big, pretty flowers.
Yeah. In fact, there it
there
is.
It is. Wow.
All right.
Magic.
Yeah. These are plants that also bloom in the winter, and so I just really appreciate them.
Yeah, and they come in other colors. Some are very beautiful.
Yeah. There's a plant called a Gaura, Gaura, that kind of sprays out flowers on big, long, waving kind of wands of stems. And they also seem to be really drought tolerant.
They are. I think they're native to Texas. But I had collected seed from the Davis Arboretum, and they're very easy to propagate. But then they became weeds.
Yeah,
in
they
the
do
garden.
spread.
They were everywhere.
Yeah.
So now I've discovered the art of deadheading to control that part of plants that overpopulate.
Yeah. I'll just mention two others. One is the California fuchsia. So fuchsias are really hard to grow here. At least I am very challenged growing regular fuchsias. But the California fuchsia is a wildflower that is amazingly prolific, as you say, even might spread a bit more than you want, but has really bright orange flowers that hummingbirds love too. So. And
the funny thing about it, it's related to the fuchsia that doesn't do well here.
Really?
Yeah, it's just adapted. You know, it's from the West, so it's very drought tolerant. Unlike you know, the plant that most people consider fuchsia, which is, loves water, needs water and shade.
Yeah, and shade. Right. Yeah. So those are, and our Europes is also a plant with kind of a daisy-like flower, and I don't think we brought pictures of those either, but it also blooms in the summer, I mean in the winter, so I appreciate them especially too.
Yeah.
But let's just see if we can see one of the pictures that you brought and see if you can't tell us a little bit about it.
Sure.
Oh, that's a weird and wonderful.
Yeah, that's a close-up of a milkweed. It's called the showy milkweed, and it can be a little bit invasive, but it has a very beautiful flower and foliage, and it's the host plant for the monarch butterfly. And I've been very sad because it does not get chewed up anymore, and it's because the monarch don't seem to be around to chew it, and that's kind of a sad sign.
Yeah. It's a very sad sign.
Yeah. And this is the milkweed of the whole plant further back. This is called flowering currant. It's another California native. It's a shrub that likes some shade, and it's native to the coast of Santa Barbara, but actually it's native to British Columbia down to Santa Barbara, and it's more coastal, but it does fairly well in Sacramento, and it's very beautiful. And this is called Chinese houses is an annual, and very pretty for dry shade, but it's a spring. And this is the pipe vine swallowtail butterfly on the pipe vine.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, the pipe vine plant that it's sitting in front of is the host plant for this butterfly. And this is called Cleveland sage, and it's another native. These are all pictures of natives.
The thing I really like about those sages, especially that one, is it fills your entire yard with aroma.
Oh, it's
It's
great.
really
When I walk
wonderful.
up to the house
Yeah.
every afternoon, it's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
And if you walked by it and brushed by it, you know it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it smells like California. It
Yeah.
connects you, that fragrance aroma.
Yeah.
Plus, it's good for butterflies. And this is one of our all-time favorite plants is the native coral bell. Though this is a hybrid. The straight species is not quite this pink. It still is beautiful.
Yeah.
And then the blue, of course, is ceanothus or California lilac, a native, and it's in a bed of California poppy. And this is one of my favorite grasses that's fairly adaptable, and it's called, I call it mosquito grass, but it's done well for me, and I think it's just such a charming grass.
There's a lot of that in the rock garden.
There's quite a bit, yeah.
So let's just mention the rock garden, because I know, Marcia, you volunteered there, and Daisy, you were the really the gardener that created the rock garden there at Land Park.
Right.
So do you want to just describe it a little bit? It's such a, it's very easy to get to place, but it's a really great example of many wonderful drought-tolerant plants.
Yes. Well, it was built by the WPA program, which was
In the 30s.
Depression era works program, and in years past, it was taken care of by a staff of people. But then over the years, the budgets of the parks was dwindled, and so it was just me after a while. So when I first got there in the 80s, there was not a whole lot of plants. Just let's see, there was ivy, mostly ivy,
Oh dear.
and a little bit hypericum and vinca major. And over the courses of about 25 years, and about 15 of those years, it was exclusively hand watered.
Wow.
And it's about an acre site, but it's over the years it's transitioned from common plants that I could easily propagate that needed water, and then once we got an irrigation system, a lot of things died because the irrigation system was hit and miss, and I didn't have time to hand water anymore. But then that forced me to grow things that would tolerate less water. So,
Yeah.
anyway, it's great. And it's turned into a garden for bees and butterflies, hummingbirds, and
And
Yeah.
finches.
and finches. Yeah.
And lizards.
And lizards.
Yeah. It's really a wonderful showplace of natives, and it's right by that big pond in Land Park over toward Fairy Tale Town.
Yes.
Where the amphitheater
Yes,
is.
next to the amphitheater. So it's on 15th Avenue east of Lampard Drive.
So it's a really easy place to get to, and I just encourage people to go and see what plants they are. So we're coming up to the end of the show a bit. We still have a few minutes, and I know that, Marcia, you want to remind us of the plant sale, and then I know other people had some announcement type things to say.
Okay. The plant sale is this coming weekend, October 3rd and 4th, at the Shepherd Garden Art Center in McKinley Park, which is on McKinley Boulevard and 33rd Street in East Sacramento. And 10 to 4 a.m. or 4 p.m. both days.
Yeah.
4 a.m. And there's going to be a lot of plants there and a lot of good food and arts and crafts for your garden. So
And a lot of advice
yes,
that
a lot
can
of
be
advice
given.
too,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, great. And Chris, I know you had an
Yeah, I just
announcement.
wanted to mention that, and Daisy mentioned this earlier too, that UC Davis Arboretum is a fantastic resource locally if you're just trying to get familiar and trying to figure out what do I want, like that picture of those coral bells that you had. Those take a lot of shade. They actually have wonderful stands of them underneath trees there. You can actually see what they look like and think about your garden and think, oh, hey, I'd like that look. What kind of plant provides that? It's a great resource. They also have some upcoming public events on October 10th and 24th. But also, I'm part of a local conservation group that has been fighting an effort by the city to repeal the ban on artificial turf in your front yard, and I think you've heard of what the benefits are of having a living front yard, and this is certainly something Sacramento is known for, the city of trees. In order to have trees be healthy, you need healthy landscape around them, and so the Valley Water Conservation advocates have been urging the city not to encourage artificial turf and instead encourage these kind of low water use landscapes. So.
Well, that sounds good.
Yeah. Plus, another resource that I strongly support is Elderberry Farms, which is the California Native Plant Society plant nursery that's operated mainly by volunteers. And the plants that they grow are collected nearby, and so these are hard to find natives that tend to do well on very little water because they are from the area. And so it's a really fantastic resource for getting plants that not only do well in the drought but will support wildlife.
So thank you so much for listening. It's been great to be with you this evening, and tune in again to Soapbox. We hope that this has been interesting to you and that it's helped solve some of the problems you're having in your yard. Really great to be with you with these experts.